Hey guys, welcome back. This is Maverick here with episode 2 of Darwin's Game. So, last episode was quite the introductory episode, and quite long as well, I might add. Well, I would say the premise of it is intriguing. Personally, I do like these kinds of settings which deal with gamification of a certain world, whether it's isekai or fantasy or whatnot. I'm a avid PC gamer, though I definitely don't play as much as I can nowadays, and I do enjoy this kind of topic, right? With that being said, however, the one thing that's I still have doubts about would be the main character, particularly Kaname, right? So even though I do like that he's, he thinks on his head, he's not one of those more dull type of protagonists. He's also seems to be sort of like this goody two shoes kind of person, and really for these kinds of series, a large part of the enjoyment factor comes from how well you relate with the main character, right? So we shall see from here. Anyways, I've been told that in this episode, a lot more mechanics are going to be explained, which is good because that's what I like to see. And so, let's get started, shall we? Alrighty, let's begin in 3, 2, 1, play. Woo. Oh yeah, and I just remembered, we got the ending scene to look forward to with yep, there we go. Don't question it, man. Just go for it. Is this an R17 anime? I don't think so, is it? Impeccable logic. Oh, you're in clan. Yep. Alright. She's cute, so it's forgivable. Alrighty, so the first opening. Let's take a look at this. Of course it will be muted. Hey, you just threw a phone away. Oh, wait a minute. I think we looked at this last episode, right? This is the end of last episode. Yeah, this is the end of last episode. Alright, let's get this for now then. And back. If you guys do want me to keep the opening, do let me know. Shelter item. This reminds me of some games that I've played before. Ooh. Sure, I'll create a family with you. She is such a troll. What? What is wrong with this girl? And that was the perfect timing to ask more about the game. Dude, wasn't that the entire reason you seeked her out? Oh. Eh. Man, that beeping sound is so annoying. But back to my earlier point. So, the sort of protecting shield or barrier. You know, you would think that in most normal. Okay, hold that thought. So here we get into the actual clan wars, like I said last episode, right? Ganging up seems to be a prominent strategy here. So yeah, anyways, back to the point I was making about the shields, right? So for a lot of the current day games, typically new players would have the shield by default, at least for like the first few days or something, just to get them off their feet. Oh, Yogi Park. Okay, so that goes back to... So where are the rules being written? Like... Hmm. True. Also, about 10 years ago, it was also a place where a lot of budding idols practiced in public. Not nowadays anymore, though. She's cute, so it's forgivable. 'I'd like to see some new clothes on her.
ダーウィンズゲームだぞ。それもこれからよくわかんないイベントだぞ。肝が据わってるというかなんというか。ひょっとして今頃になってオタオタしてる俺の方がおかしいのか。カナメ。
Quite summer-like. Although I think I like the frills on her red dress better.
82%なら悪い数字じゃねえ。それより俺以外にも売ったりしてねえだろうな。今のところは。ですが、こっちも商売なのです。先着3名様にはお売りする予定ですのでご了承くださいです。まあ俺が一番目なら文句はねえよ。先に抑えちまえばいい話だからな。それより解析や。はい。ボイチェンで声色を隠すのは構わねえけどよ。そのボイチェン壊れてるんじゃね？そんなことより、あなたの元に届いたという宝探しゲームの招待メッセージの方が気になりますけど。なんだ、情報があれば買うってか。価値のある情報ならば。一部のプレイヤーにだけ届いてるってこと以外は知らねえよ。もう切るぜ。他に情報売る前に須藤要を見つけたいからね。
Why? Yeah.
私のところにも届いちゃってることなのですよね。ショッピングモールの調査ってただの買い物じゃん。しかも服ばっか。今ゲームプレイヤーがうじゃうじゃいる危険地帯なんだろう。こんなのんきに構えてていいのか。まあこのゲームがなければ、しかも普通の女の子なんだよな。ダーウィンズゲーム、どう考えても異常だ。転送だのポイント換金だの、どれ一つ取ったって常識じゃありえねえ。でも
Now you noticed?
一番異常なのは、俺や普通の女の子を突然超能力者に変えてしまうシギルっていうシステムじゃないか。え？あんたが須藤要で間違いねえみたいだな。ちょっと面かせよ。待てよ、一体何の用だ。お前もプレイヤーなのか。いいから黙ってついてこい。こいつを無事に返してほしいんだろ。こいつ何者だ。エイスっていう悪質クランの仲間か。どこまで行くつもりだよ。用があるならさっさと済ませてもらいたいんだけどな。お前 D ゲームを入れた携帯をうかつにさらしすぎだぜ。重要性が分かってねえだろ。そうか、もしこいつが俺の携帯でゲームを勝手に操作したら。アホくなったな。何を考えてるか。
Again, my big question is how come everyone else knows information and he doesn't? Like I said, the tutorial system in this game is rather lacking.
たいことがそれだけってんなら、そろそろ携帯返せよ。まあ、そう慌てなさんな。お前ちょっと話題になってんだよ。ソロの新人が新人狩りと無敗の女王を倒したってな。着ぐるみ野郎と主家のことか。D ゲームでソロが初戦を生き残るのはただでさえ珍しいんだ。まして有名プレイヤー相手に2連勝決めたとなりゃ話題にもなるのさ。まあ有名っつっても新人狩りの方が色物としてだけどな。
So, you know, I guess normally, yeah, she really lost way too easily in the last episode. But anyways, I guess the way that new players are normally recruited into the game is, you know, with already established clans, they scout out people, send them the game, and then just absorb them into the clan. Oh.
近加入したシグという男は詳細不明ながら火炎魔人という
Wow, this is the guy who massacred the, I guess, mafia?
ほとんど情報がありません。なんせ戦った相手は皆殺しにされていますので。ありがとう。男女検討クラブについては後金を払うわ。ワンについては引き続き調査して。これ以上の調査となるとかなり危険なのですが。成功報酬3倍。仕方ないですね。約束ですよ。ところで、あなたに勝った有望新人についての最新情報、興味あります？今すぐ知っていることを全部喋るなら生かしておいてあげる。
マジで拍子抜けだぜ。本当に A ランク相手に勝ったのか？少し待っててやるからよ。しかにヘルプコール出せよ。仲間になったって聞いてるぜ。A ランカー挑戦はもうちょい先のつもりだったが、流れに乗って繰り上げるってのも悪くねえ。嫌なこった。俺を転がしたくらいで調子に乗ってんのか。それに仲間ってわけじゃねえよ。何？嘘ついてるんじゃねえだろうな。なめすぎたバカ。
Ooh, that was quick. Yeah, he can't fight though. Ooh, nice. Okay, nice. Yeah, so... Okay, so that's his sigil. Okay. Well, now he's got even more points.
D ゲームプレイヤーって年上ばっかで、俺もクランじゃいまいち肩身が狭いんだよ。あんただってわかるだろ。
わかるけど。
What?
なんだ
The event starting?
探しゲーム開
In
始
a
も
minute.
1分もねえのか。結局何が始まるんだと思う。
私もイベントとか参加したことないし。
お前らのところにも来てたのか。俺にも来てたぜ。
イベント参加組のくせに D ゲーム仕掛けたの？おとなしくイベントに集中しなさいよ。バカなの？
うるせえな。
I agree. You're an idiot.
もっと準備をした方が良かったのかね。
And you even paid for that information.
スコップとか穴掘りでもすんのかよ。まあ渋谷で穴掘りやらされることはねえか。宝探しってぐらいだからバトルロイヤルってことはねえと思うけどな。割と平和なイベントなんじゃね？だといいけど。なんだ？
Oh, they just get teleported over.
転送だって。こりゃどうもお別れみてえだな。じゃあなお二人さん、次にやる時まで生きてろよ。
要、転送先が近いとは限らない。もし離れてたら早めに合流を。
わかった。その時は連絡す。
Damn.
始まったのか。宝探しゲーム。仲良く楽しく宝探し。
What happens if they're like in the public while they're being teleported?
いきなり転送が始まるとは、とっさにこれを持ち出せたのは不幸中の幸いですが。なるほど。
Huh. You can't even choose to not attend the event?
このルールの一文、もしゲームがクリアできずに制限時間が過ぎた場合、リングの所有数が3個未満のプレイヤーはゲームオーバー。正直、運営が参加者全員助かる分の
300 in this event.
これは平和な宝探しゲームではなく、リングを奪い合うサバイバルゲームです。
ああ、つまりあれかな。俺様が得意な奪い合いってやつかな、これ。しかもぶっ
Okay. This dude.
もう最高だぜ、Dゲーム。
Oh, there's someone behind him.
あれエースのクランリーダー1か。イベント開始早々ついてない。だけど逆に考えればヤバいプレイヤーを真っ先に消すチャンスだ。
ああ、なんだお前。イベント開始早々自殺志願か。
残念だけど今から死ぬのはそっち。いや、もうすでにあんたは終わってる。乱戦になる前にあんたをやれたのはラッキーだったよ。私の炎は4000度。骨まで残さず焼き尽くす。
Oh. What? I thought that dude's ability was cutting people up. Okay. And this is the actual ending song. Oh, oops. Sorry about that. Accidentally drew the timer back. Anyways, as I was saying, since this is the actual ending song, let's watch this for the first time, at least. So okay, so this girl is also one of the main cast as well. Not much is obvious, the analyst. Not bad. Okay, and then these two as well. We saw them standing with the main character. They're both gun users, rifle users. Yeah, right here. Oh, this is his team. Probably his clan going forward. Okay. See you guys after this. Alrighty, so we did get quite a bit of mechanics, not quite as much as I would have liked, but there is plenty to talk about. So let's get right into it, shall we? First of all, let's talk a little bit about the shelter system, which actually is quite nostalgic for me. There was a period in my life where I really these sort of MMO strategy games, right? They're not quite the, as similar as playing an RTS game such as StarCraft, or playing normal strategy games such as I don't know, such as like Civilization or Crusader Kings or something like that, right? But that was back when, in the early days, it was more web-based games, and you don't really. It's more strategic. Like you build up your armies and whatnot. You coordinate with other players, and then you fight against other players as well in this massive battlefield. Not quite in like a normal PvP as you might understand from normal MMORPGs, but more like you're sending your armies to do battle in different places, and then you got reinforcements and whatnot. And then you also have, and these battles, like sometimes these battles could last over many days, even up to a week or so, and I mean in real life time, and that's 24/7, right? It's never stopping. So you would also have to have shifts, people who are taking a close look at the battlefield, calling in reinforcements, so on and so forth. I was actually quite into that whole thing back in my college years. That was quite fun, and I had a lot of free time, so why not, right? And then later on in, I guess, about 2014, 2015, this sort of trend came into mobile gaming, right? Starting with probably, I think the most prominent one would be Clash of Kings, and then stuff like Game of War, King of Avalon, Mafia City, and then there are 1,000,001 clones, right? And that is particularly where I feel like I first saw this sort of shelter mechanic, where basically it grants you invulnerability and you can't be attacked by other players. Now, you would think that maybe this is a better comparison would be normal MMORPGs, right? Since those are, you generally control one character and then you fight against each other. But the thing about MMORPGs is typically most of these have what we call designated safe zones and then designated PvP zones. So instead of actually having to use an item or whatnot to grant you invulnerability to being dueled or challenged by other players, you could just stay within the safe zones. But apparently this game is one that's based on, there are no safe zones, right? Everywhere is fair game, and so that's where these kind of shelters come in. I remember back when I was playing, and I did also go through a phase where I played the mobile games as well. One of the common tactics in Clash of Kings or their various clones would be to, teleport into an enemy stronghold and then wreck everybody there, and then just as the enemy is about to mount a resistance, you just open up your shield or shelter, and then, the enemy can't do anything against you, right? It also ties into the play-to-win aspect of these games as well, because most of the time you can't earn them directly through in-game means, so you have to spend real-life money on it, and that's part of why a lot of people hate these kind of games as well, because they are more or less pay to win. Like let's be frank here. But I mean, yeah, it's just fun, right? Now, and I was actually thinking, whether or not they could do something similar in this game as well. But since it doesn't protect against all battles, you still need to actually, so there's the sort of encounter battle, right? So beyond, I guess what they're trying to say is you can be declared on even if the person is not in proximity to you, but if you actually encounter somebody else in real life within, I guess, a certain radius or whatnot, then they can directly challenge you, and then it can't be avoided by the shelter. I think that's what they're trying to get at with that system. But yeah, it's quite fun to have, and quite nostalgic to have something like that. In those types of strategy games that I'm talking about, in order to have a good night's sleep, you actually need to drop shields before you go to bed, right? Otherwise, one of the common ways to raid others would be to wait until they're asleep. Especially for a clan of some sort. Typically, they will all be of a certain. There will be a predominant country or language or place that they come from, right? So you could easily wait until most of them are asleep, and then, just teleport in, wreck everybody, and then get out. So in order to have a good night's sleep, a lot of the more higher ranked players would always drop a shield or a shelter before going to bed, right? And this actually ties in with something I'm curious about as well, like whether or not, using ambushing others while they are asleep or vulnerable is a valid strategy in this game as well, or are there specific rules protecting against this? Because again, we're not really clear on the rules here, right? And that's something that I'm going to touch on as well. Um, and so beyond that, with all these unknowns and really with no actual rule system for them to look up, once again, in last episode, I mentioned how clans would be a very, very important thing in this game, right? Because especially with this episode as well, we can see that clearly intervening in somebody else's battle is allowed, right? So we could see Shuka here actually helping to fight back this new enemy, and suffered no consequence, at least as far as we can see, right? Probably there is some actual consequences to it, otherwise it would be a little bit too overpowered. But you can gang up, right? I'm guessing perhaps the killing blow or whatnot has to be made by the player that's actually being challenged. But if you are able to lend support to them, having a support group is very, very important, right? So already in the last episode, I mentioned how the prominent strategy would probably be to quickly get a clan going, get people on your side, and then so gang up against the others and defeat them in that kind of way. Now, not only that, but in this episode, well, I guess they mentioned in the last episode as well how solo players are very, very rare, and I think, especially since we can see how clearly this game does not have a very good onboarding or tutorial process, the only way for a newbie to actually have a chance here is if they were actually recruited by someone else, and they were taught the ropes, so to speak. And normally you would do that because you are in a clan and you want to enlarge your clan, right? So you want to recruit new players into your clan. In this right now, I don't see any other further mechanics or consequences, so we can just safely assume that the bigger your clan is, the more people you have, the stronger that you are, the more you're able to gang up against others, right? And particularly, it doesn't seem like there is a difference in the power level of abilities either. It's not like something where you can power up your abilities. Your rank doesn't really have much to do with that, at least as far as we can see so far, right? It seems that the rank just depends on how many people that you actually defeat. Of course, you would probably, gain better usage, better understanding of your power. With more points, you may be able to buy more perks and whatnot. But so far as we can see through the current mechanics, there's nothing to stop a D rank or a C rank from, upsetting an A rank, as we could clearly see with our main character, right? So yeah. So once again, this is, the prominent strategy is to form a clan and to recruit as many members as you possibly can, right? Now, if this were a game, there'd probably be a system where you would have a limit to how many clan members you could have, and so on and so forth, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And speaking about pay to win, right? So I mentioned this in the last episode as well, but here, now that I know that they actually have stuff like shelter systems or transfer invulnerability, I'm wondering more than ever whether or not it's actually possible to spend real life money and convert them into points. Now, obviously, it's going to be very, very expensive. We can clearly see that 1 point equals to a lot of money, real life money here. But hey, if there are millionaires or billionaires who are part of this game, who is there a method for them to actually use their wealth to gain an unfair advantage here, right? That's probably also something that's, I don't know, maybe it'll be explored, maybe not. But if this really does have this sort of parallel with real life pay-to-win games as well, I would say it'd be fair game to explore this kind of topic. What else did I want to say? I already mentioned about the bad onboarding tutor. Like, seriously, there are clearly, with this episode, we know that there are clearly defined rules, right? Such as not being allowed to discuss this Darwin's game in public. So, you would think that there would be a place within the freaking game where you can read up the rules, right? That seems to be something that's fairly obvious, and no game would, every single game would have something like that. So, mind blown how they don't have something like that here. It's maybe a deliberate decision, and so maybe we'll learn more about that once we get into maybe further in and learn why Darwin's game exists in the first place, right? Like, is this part of some conspiracy theory or so on and so forth, some big social experiment, something like that. And it also has an event system as well, right? So again, with the gamification, love it. Lots of these games would have time limited events and whatnot, though very rarely do you see ones that force you to attend and give you a game over if you don't meet certain conditions. That seems quite harsh, right? So I actually looked back at the rules for the events for the treasure hunt, because the subtitles did not translate most of them. So first of all, we can see that there's different stones that you can collect, and each of them are worth different points. You got rubies, sapphires, emeralds, diamonds, probably some other stuff as well that was cut off I couldn't quite see, and they each have their corresponding points, right? Now, I'm not entirely sure whether or not the ring that they are talking about is equal to, these sort of stones, rubies, sapphires, whatever, right? Are they equal or are they not? No, don't really know. However, we do see that each of these stones are worth different points, and I do wonder if these points can be directly translated into the points that you get, your actual points that you receive, right? Considering this is a treasure hunt, I would say it's a fair assumption to make that these are equal to those points, and attending this kind of event is probably a really great way for you to gain a lot of points, which equals a lot of items or money or whatnot very, very fast, right? Some others, so beyond that, we know that they need to collect 3 rings before the end, which is 24 hours later, or else they would be forcibly given a game over. Beyond that, they mentioned a few other rules as well, such as they disabled the player search feature on the map, which I think was what we saw in the first episode, and how the hunter was able to track all the different newbies and whatnot. Taking place of it is some sort of trans or interdimensional camera system, question mark, which can be used to search for rings. At least that's how the rules described it. Not really sure what's going on there. We'll probably know in the next episode. Can't use player search, I just mentioned that, and also you can't exit the actual game area, right? So that's probably also something very important to take note of. I do wonder if that's going to play into one of the ways where our protagonists win against some opponents, because heaven knows how many different kinds of settings or animes or mangas use this kind of system where you're outside the designated area, so you lose, right? So considering our protagonist, I feel like it would fit his sort of fighting style, as we can see so far, right? Especially using the rules or whatnot is something that I can see him doing. And speaking of the protagonist, speaking of Kaname, I have to say I was quite impressed with him this episode. He already demonstrated in the first episode his sort of tactical brain, using his surroundings and whatnot, keeping a clear head and taking advantage of different opportunities. It was shown here as well. Not sure I quite buy that a completely untrained rookie and a completely untrained fighter would be able to pull those kind of moves, but hey, he's the main character, he's the male lead, he can do whatever he wants, right? So yeah, I am warming up a little bit more to Kaname. Shuka is hilarious, honestly, and quite cute as well. So like I said, she's cute, she can be forgiven. So yeah, so let's just go into the next episode, where I presume we're going to be formally introduced to an analyst character, and she'll probably join the main character and eventually be part of his clan. So yeah, there we go. I think that covers everything I want to say, so I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.